Well, let's talk about China. All right, we're going to talk about China because I really want to talk about Afghanistan. But the big news is what the ripple of Afghanistan means for the rest of us. Because of the failure in the withdrawal from Afghanistan, I mean, it's absolute chaos. They're trying to make it seem like it's good. It's not good. It's not good. China is taking advantage. And we have this article from the fake news Global Times. It's China's mouthpiece saying, update, Senator reveals 30,000 U.S. troops stationed in Taiwan Island equal to declaring war on China if it's true. Tweet deleted after wide controversy. So it seems that Senator John Cornyn just didn't know what he was talking about. The Taiwan number, that there's 30,000 troops there, apparently it's an old number going back to the 70s or whatever. But China's not acting like it was just a dumb tweet from someone who wasn't paying attention. They're trying to make it seem like he revealed the information. Look at this. They say some others believe the news leaked by the U.S. senator. Cannot be true because 30,000 is not some small amount the U.S. Army could hide and not being noticed on the island. And the U.S. has nothing to gain by stationing the U.S. Army in the island. Sacrificing its own interest to satisfy Taiwan separatists also does not fit with U.S. foreign policy, just like the U.S. did in Afghanistan. Talk about getting smacked around quite a bit by China right now. Ouch.
Yeah, I mean, you don't usually see the CCPs and their mouthpieces being so publicly, I would just say, trading barbs back and forth, especially kind of operating within the news cycle as we are right now. So this is definitely something new for the CCP. This is not something that you even 4 years ago, 5 years ago, you would see them doing. Only it's because now, and I think with Xi Jinping and his new thrust for a more aggressive China on the world stage, we're not going to be we don't want to be viewed as a third world country anymore. So for years and years and years, we were told China is still developing. China is still, we're bringing our people out of poverty. We need all these programs. But then if you just look, I believe yesterday, the Financial Times actually had the story up that BlackRock came out and said that they want to increase their investors' exposure to China. They want people tripling their investments in China. That's BlackRock because they said that they have sort of like an internal think tank there. They call it the BlackRock Investment Institute. And they said, we don't view China as a developing country anymore. They are a fully developed nation and we should treat them the same way as we treat everyone else. They are an engine that is growing. They are the future. That's essentially what BlackRock is saying, right? And now China, they are now using this opportunity as a way to shrug their shoulders off of sort of what Tony Blinken or Joe Biden might call the international rules-based order. They're shrugging off the WTO, the UN, etc., everything else, and they're saying, we are not going to be pushed around by you anymore. We're going to push back.
Think about how long it's been that China's been effectively just telling us to shove it, where they know that, man, no matter what the U.S. says, it's always a finger wag. So they're dumping all this pollution. They're producing massive amounts of carbon while the rest of the world is like, hey, we're going to stop. Hey, we've got these protocols we're all going to agree to. And China's like, nah, no thanks. Or they say they will. And then they start building more coal power plants. You've got really dumb leadership in the West where they're like, it's okay, guys. China said they're on board with our programs. And then China's just laughing like, why would we ever actually do what we said? And it's been happening for a really, really long time.
That's a really good description, especially if you're going to go into Afghanistan later. But starting with China, like as a country, they take themselves seriously.
Yeah.
There's another thing that China has that America doesn't have right now is that America is going through some sort of identity crisis where it can't figure out whether itself should exist anymore. I mean,
the scary thing is that's true.
The perfect way to put it.
Yeah, like
really is the perfect way to put it.
It's going through internal mayhem. Why else wouldn't China move? If you're thinking about yourself as two players on a chessboard and you're watching your opponent run into dismay, if not aiding it somehow, or at least prodding it along, you could say that one way or another. I mean, you could ask questions of international influence and terrorism, and you could go all down those roads. But instead of just accusing China of participating in domestic terrorism within the world stage, they will make an agreement that they know they won't follow because they don't respect you as an interlocutor, right?
Yep. Right. So what essentially you're talking about is this idea that I don't think China knows that it's not into their best interest to get into a shooting war with the U.S., no. Right? A kinetic warfare is not something that would be really beneficial for either side. And so that what is the most effective, right, tool of their international foreign policy for their interests is what you would call strategic neutralization, right? Get the U.S. so upset, so divided, so screaming at each other, so tied up in chasing its own tail in internal domestic tensions that we are unable to make a stand on the world stage. And we said that. I came on here and said that for a year on this show, and I've said it elsewhere. And then you look at Afghanistan, see, we're so busy, and I mean, it's almost a cliche right now, but you've got General Milley talking about white rage, and we need to focus on critical race theory, et cetera, et cetera. And then meanwhile, it's like you can't even conduct a basic evacuation operation of your own, or not even before that. I'm getting ahead of myself. You can't even conduct a safe withdrawal of your own forces, right? You didn't know that you were about to be attacked, which then set up, right? This was supposed to be withdrawal. This wasn't supposed to be an evacuation operation. We're only talking about an evacuation because it was a failure. So for China, this is exactly what they want. Now they get to backfill us in Afghanistan. Now they get to go after the rare earth minerals. Now they get to buy up all that stuff. Of course, they're making a deal with the Taliban. However, and this is my assessment, I've thrown it out there, I'll say it again tonight, but I think that you will see Taliban attacking China's One Belt, One Road infrastructure within, or,
Really?
you know, maybe not specifically Taliban, but other extremist elements over there within 5 years. That's just the history of the region. That's the history of the peoples of that region. You do not see occupying nations, occupying forces doing well in that part of the world. And there's a lot of history behind that.
I have a kind of a caveat. Unless China does manifest the oppressor-oppressed narrative within the Afghan people and say,
I don't know about that.
I mean, it's not hard. You like when we were on the ground, we experienced that with the locals. Oh, you're not the Americans. You're the oppressors.
Okay, is that what they said?
Of
course.
It's already there. The language is already invested in the system, and they already have the easy example of, well, America's the big bad. Why wouldn't China motivate that cultural aspect? Remember, China, the current CCP was created by Mao. Maoist China was this idea of manifesting the political disdain of the people for their own government. Now you just use China doing that on the world stage, manifesting countries or pseudo countries against ambiguous ideas like the West, like rule of law, like America. Like I would not be surprised.
I think it buys them a couple of years. I think they can get a couple of years out of using that very narrative, and as well going with the Taliban and saying they are. I don't think they've officially recognized the Taliban, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't believe anyone has officially recognized them yet. China has come the closest, but even then, I think it's something more. They said like we acknowledge the will of the Afghan people rather than we recognize the Taliban as legitimate government. So I think it buys them a couple of years. Obviously, it's in their best interest, Taliban's interest, to receive if they can get any kind of deals with China, if they can get banking, if they can get all this. Because of course, you're seeing a lot of the international community trying to shut down any aspect of the Taliban getting into the finances of the government of Afghanistan, being able to use any of this stuff. And so for China, it creates this sort of wellspring for them of having that ability to not have to use the international system because they can just go through China. So China's, as you say, they're trying to set themselves up as we are the benefactor to go against the big bad of the West. And I do think that'll buy them some time, but there's just 2,000 years of history of Afghanistan being the graveyard of empires.
Not to mention, if they're going to try and make it seem like, oh, the West is bad, they're the real enemies. They're also trying to make the world think that we've lost our power. Their attitude is the U.S. is fading, the empire is collapsing, we're the big bad, we're next. So I don't know if they would want to convey that message simultaneously while they're trying to convince everyone the U.S. is failing.
Robert Tabor, the classic War of the Flea.
Right.
I'm not an expert on his work alone, but the introductory paragraphs are: insurgency is prolonged political warfare, it creating the spirit of revolution, which runs on the idea that it could happen. Right, so you don't. So Afghanistan or China does not endorse the Taliban; they endorse the Afghan Caliphate,
right?
Which is the Chinese puppet of that attaches themselves to movements like the Nation of Islam, then enters Western countries and uses that as a backdoor road into pushing more disdain for Western values.
And then the real question, though, is what happens if, and they are talking about setting up an Islamic Republic, or I believe Islamic Emirate, I think is the official name. It's not they're like Republic. No,
the Islamic Emirate of Afghanistan.
Islamic Emirate of Afghanistan. So how do you have an Islamic Emirate, but when right across your border with China is what region of China? Xinjiang.
Yeah.
Xinjiang, which is, I think, 3 times that one province, 3 times the size of Afghanistan. Nowhere near as populated as Afghanistan, but it's massively bigger than Afghanistan. And you have 1 million Uyghur Muslims, also Sunni, by the way, who are kept in concentration camps by your same benefactor. Essentially, once you see these narrative conflicts, these contradictions, I think, are what will eventually cause problems in this relationship, because China is going to say, well, we're here to help you, okay, but what about our friends, our brothers that are within your land that you're oppressing, so that you can build your pipelines across Pakistan?
I've heard some stories about what China is doing, and I kind of feel like the Islamic Emirate of Afghanistan would not mind. So I don't know if you've heard these stories that when they harvest organs from the Uyghurs, they can then sell them to Arabic nations who need organ transplants that are halal. Yeah. I don't know if that's true. If you've heard anything like that.
So
I've heard
essentially, what I'm saying though is that you will still end up getting breakaway groups, right? You're still going to end up getting a group there, because and this is the nature of radical Islam, is that you will have a group that says, how dare we be in bed with these guys? How dare we go along with this? They are atheists. They are communists. They are from the same stripe as the Soviet Union when they tried to impose communists on us. Now you're trying to get in bed with the new communists who oppress our people, and that's where you're going to get this friction.
Do you think with these threats coming from China, not only for the military force against Taiwan, but also to crush U.S. troops, assuming there are any there? I think we have like 20. There's 20 military personnel who are in Taiwan for some training exercises. Do you think this leads to war?
Look, I'm sort of like the proverbial, I don't think we're going to go to a shooting war with Taiwan anytime soon. That being said, it's possible, right? I don't think it's in China's best interest. I don't think it's in our best interests. Again, remember the plan, right? The axis of the elites between the CCP and the 1% in the West. We want you to become the consumer nation. They want the West to be the consumers of the world. Our inflated consumer values, our dollars. We want you to buy our TVs. We want you to buy our iPhones. Everything that's made in China, you are to consume that and be happy. Remember, right? You'll own nothing and you'll be happy.
Yeah, but that bursts at some point.
But it's still to your interest to continue it going for as long as possible.
Yeah.
And then if we can condition down to your point, if we can condition down your national will, your national identity, if you don't feel as strongly as being able to stand up for your allies, then eventually you'll get to the point to say, well, why would we go to war over Taiwan, right? Who cares about this thing? And then, so for China's perspective, again, it's similar to the Taliban in a sense. There's that phrase that's been going around this week. You have the watches, but we have the time, right? So it was 100 years for Hong Kong, and they 1897 to 1997, right? And that handover of Taiwan is seen, by the way, as the end of the British Empire. Many people see that as the end of the British Empire, as the symbolic act that, okay, we are no longer this international empire.
What about Macau? That's Chinese?
Yeah, I think Macau was 99, so that was Portugal, that was about 2 years later. But Hong Kong, of course, was the big one. Though, if you actually look at it in terms of local revenue, I believe Macau is actually ahead. I know they're way above Las Vegas in terms of gambling revenue. That is the gambling center of the world right now, is Macau.
Really?
Oh yeah, 100%. And so, and you better believe that a lot of the companies from Vegas are all still operating in Macau, which means they're all tied in with CCP as well. And so you've got a situation where, to the CCP's perspective, they want to assimilate Taiwan through osmosis. The strategy has been isolate them throughout the world, cut off their trade, cut off their finances, right? So if you land, I've been to Taiwan. I've been on both sides of the Taiwan Strait, actually. And, looked across, you can't see it, but, and so when you land in the Taipei airport, usually when you land somewhere, you see, what's the first thing you see is advertisements, right? You see and it's usually banks or some kind of real estate or something like that. In the Taipei airport, there's none of that. Right, there's just a couple pictures up of Taiwan from like the local, Ministry of Tourism, and that's it. So there aren't those huge international brands playing in Taiwan the way that you'd see everywhere else. And why is that? That's because of economic isolationism. That's Beijing going around telling everybody, you don't do business with this island because we want their only economic, social, and cultural vector to be through us. And if you want access to our markets, if you want access to be able to sell, if you want all the deals that we can offer you, right, you have to cut off Taiwan. That is the price you have to pay. And that's why, if you go back to the 1970s, that is why the U.S. government recognized the government of Beijing for the first time. For all those years throughout the Cold War, we didn't recognize them. And it was Carter who eventually switched that over, which then had the after effect of changing the seat at the United Nations, which was controlled by Taiwan, the Republic of China, which was and is the legitimate government of China prior to the CCP. Then that seat at the UN Security Council went to Communist China.
Thanks for checking out this clip from the Timcast IRL podcast. If you want to see the full show, come back to this channel, youtube.com/TimcastIRL, Monday through Friday at 8 p.m., where you can leave comments and super chat, and we actually will read your comments on the show. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe, and if you want exclusive members-only content, segments you can't get anywhere else, go to timcast.com, become a member, and we even have full bonus episodes. Thanks for hanging out, and we'll see you all next time.